Well, I'm coming to you from my church office on Wednesday, July the 1st, and we are beginning today an introduction to the book of 2 Kings, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I've titled this devotional commentary, A New Era, A New Prophet, Elisha. And we're going to enter into a brief devotional of 2 Kings chapter 1. And it really has no introduction at all. We transition from the end of 1 Kings directly into the book of 2 Kings. And we find Ahaziah is now the king of Israel. Now, he is the son of Ahab and Jezebel. Now, the Bible tells us that he reigned only 2 years in Israel, and then for some reason he fell through the lattice work of an upper window room in his palace, suffered a grave injury that ultimately was a terminal injury. Now, he wondered if he would ever recover from the fall, and so he sent messengers to inquire of the pagan god Beelzebub. Yahweh, however, intervened. That is the Lord God of heaven, intervened, and he sent Elijah to confront the king's messengers. Elijah reproved the messengers, and he sent word to Elijah Elijah sent word to King Ahaziah that he would suffer a premature death. We continue in our study that when the couriers returned to the palace, Ahaziah realized that they had returned too early. And he inquired why they were back so soon. The messengers told how they had been met by a prophet who had rebuked them and then prophesied the king's death. Distressed, Ahaziah demanded, "What manner of man was he which came up to meet you?" And they give the description of the prophet. And Ahaziah exclaims, "It is Elijah the Tishbite." Now, Ahaziah, wicked like his father and his mother, determined to exact revenge on the prophet Elijah. He sent a captain with 50 soldiers to demand that Elijah come to see the king. Elijah boldly contested the demands of the king, and he declared, if I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume thee and thy 50. And so it was. Ahaziah then sent a second company of 50 men and a captain, and once again they were consumed with the fire of heaven. Now a third time, Ahaziah sent a captain and 50 more men. But this time the captain comes in a spirit of humility when he meets Elijah, and God commands him to go with the men to see Ahaziah. Now, Elijah, bearing the power of God in his life and ministry, he stood courageously before the bed of King Ahaziah, and he prophesied that Ahaziah would never leave his bed. In fact, he says in verse 16 of chapter 1, "Thou art gone up, but shalt surely die." Ahaziah died, and his younger brother Jehoram replaced him as the king of Israel. Now, a brief explanation. You will notice in chapter 1 and verse 17, there are two Jehorams that are mentioned. And it so happens that these are men who lived at the same time. One was Jehoram, who became the king of Israel. The other Jehoram was the son of Jehoshaphat, the godly king who reigned in Judah. Now, I'll not take time for the rest other than just to briefly say 2 Kings chapter 2 records that glorious departure of Elijah when a fiery chariot was sent and took up Elijah into heaven, and Elisha was there to witness it. And true to his promise, Elisha was blessed with a double portion of the old prophet's spirit for having seen Elijah taken up to heaven. Now, the balance of today's reading, 2 Chronicles chapter 3, introduces us to Elisha, his first ministry, as he faces the kings of 3 different nations. 2 Kings chapter 4, we read 4 miracles that were performed by Elisha. All of these lending credibility to the fact that Elisha was God's chosen servant. He was the successor of Elijah. And we will find in the weeks that will follow the great ministry that Elisha had. I will conclude with that, hoping that you might join us tonight for our Wednesday services. Our teen group, our children's ministry all begin at 6 o'clock. At 6:30, our adult Bible study will be taught by Pastor Barber, and the adult choir will also practice at 6:30. I hope that I will see many of you coming out tonight. God bless you, and have a great evening. God bless.